I had a quick moment of panic, Nancy. Thank you, John. Yep. All right. We are going to start with a public forum. And I'll read these. Okay. So, board meeting open forum procedures. If you wish to speak to the board as a whole, you can do so at the open forum section of the board meeting. The board will allow up to 30 minutes, that's 15 speakers for up to 2 minutes each, for the open forum. To address the board, you must sign in. At the open forum portion of the board chair will ask you to speak. You are asked to state your name and address for the record. You will then have 2 minutes to address the board with your comments. If many persons wish to speak on the same topic, the board chair may ask you to designate a spokesperson on behalf of the group. Generally, the board will not have a discussion with the speaker, and the board will not deliberate or take action regarding requests presented during the forum. While comments and questions on issues are welcome during the open forum, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in the public meeting. The board will not tolerate a speaker's open forum comments which identify individual employees or students in a public meeting. Should a speaker not abide by this courtesy, the board may restrict the speaker from open forum comments at future meetings. Thanks. And I think Sheila Marie is the first person signed up.
Can you stand here? All right.
That's great.
I did this under 2 minutes. Let's go. Okay. I have been on Stillwater Town Board for 22 years. We have an open forum at every single one of our meetings. I calculated it. 435 open forums I have presided at. You get a lot of great information. You get ideas from the public, in this case, parent stakeholders. You get information, you get feedback, you get some suggestions. It's a very, very valuable tool, and I'm very pleased it's been reinstated, and I appreciate it, so thank you. My second, I have observations. I've been at a number of board meetings recently, and 2 comments from parents. 2 comments that really sort of surprised me. One was a comment a number of times about our meetings are going to be too long if we have an open forum. This is a multi-million-dollar entity. You cannot expect to run it as a board 2 hours once a month. Some meetings are going to get longer. That's how you do good work, and that's just a requirement of the position. The other comment was the last meeting, there was a comment about, well, what are the consequences if parents don't follow the rules? And I was like, seriously? Consequences? There are no consequences. I mean, there are if somebody, but no one's going to violate it. The point is, there's this kind of real deep mistrust and distrust between the board members and members of the parent stakeholder group. It's not an organic development, and I don't know how it's gotten created, who set it up, who feeds it, where the energy is, but it doesn't belong. And the sooner we work together, the sooner that will all dissipate. And here's the third thing. This is my new idea. This has never been discussed at like in open forums. I'm a docent at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. I lead tours every single week for school groups from kindergarten through 12th grade. I also do college, universities, and professional groups. When I get a group of students, I know within 1 minute if they have cell phones in school. No, I'm serious. 1 minute, I can pick out in a group and tell. Some of the kids bring their phones. That's totally disruptive, obviously. Some kids, you can tell, they don't pay attention. They don't engage, they don't interact with each other. A lot of times they are physically fidgeting. They're just like shaken. My comment is, I know as parents, we've met people that are parents, get pushback from their kids, it's stupid, it's dumb, why can't we have our phones? I hear it at my house. Stand firm, don't waver. It's really, really beneficial to not have phones in school, and I see it every week at the museum. So, those are my 3 comments under 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie?
I did time this 2 minutes, but I was really close, so bear with me. I would like to speak to you today about the desperate need for an independent, anonymous school-wide survey. My support for this assertion comes from the last 2 board meetings where I saw an astonishing disconnect between board members and what is going on at school. The issue of trust was brought up, and members seem to be quite confused as to why parents have a hard time trusting the leadership. There were also statements from board members like, do we have a homework policy? And I didn't know we had a homework issue. What is the homework issue? These statements, coupled with the fact that there were people participating in the meeting that were intimately familiar with the homework issue, but sat silent and didn't utter one word of enlightenment, made the whole discussion look orchestrated and really frustrated and undermined parents' trust in the leadership. I have heard it said several times that all board members represent all of the stakeholders. From what I've seen in the last 2 board meetings, there are many board members who have no idea what the parents' concerns even are. I contend that if board members are unaware of stakeholders' concerns, they cannot hope to represent them on a board. This is why I believe we need a venue where everyone can share their opinions without being afraid of repercussions, and so the school is aware of where it is meeting expectations and where it is falling short, and about what stakeholders are most concerned. An independent, anonymous, school-wide survey would be a good start in accomplishing this. Because of the stated broken trust, this survey would necessarily be completely independent and anonymous, or it would be a waste of effort. The process would need to start with some sort of scoping issues for parents, teachers, and staff, so that relevant questions are included on the survey. The results of the survey would be available to all stakeholders, and definitive, purposeful action would be taken to address the main issues that are identified. As was reported in the previous board meeting, there is unassigned money from the budget last year, and I believe there's nothing more important the school could spend that money on than a survey at this point in its history. I thank you in advance for your consideration of my request for a school-wide survey.
Thanks, Gary. Beth Nelson.
Thank you. I'm off the cuff, so I'm going to be a little less formal. But I kind of want to reiterate a couple things Sheila, Marie, and Carrie said. First of all, thank you for the open forum. I've also been on a number of city boards, and I know we have open forum, and like Sheila and Marie alluded to, it's a great way to get parent feedback. And by closing parents out, it tends to create uprisings and lots of negative things going on. I've been an advocate for St. Clair Prep for 11 years. I've been here almost since the beginning, and I've just been so saddened by the things that have transpired over the last year. So I'm also an advocate for the survey. I got a survey last night for fall sports and was ecstatic about that. So thank you, whoever was leading that effort. It's a great way to provide feedback on the soccer season for me, and it was asked for parental and participant feedback. And being a marketing research brand person, I think it's imperative that we really look at doing something like that every year towards the end of the year and having students provide their feedback as well as parents, so they can provide feedback not only on the academic. We all came because it's a rigorous school and that's what we want for our children, but also to provide feedback on the teachers, everything. I mean, the policies, all of that. I think it's very important to do that so you have a very engaged community, and for us to regain that brand we had in the community, and hopefully we'll regain, because it seems like unfortunately we had a lot of negative press in the past 6 months, and would hope to see it become positive once again.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda, board minutes, HR report, and approval required. Everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda?
Is this a question?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
So are we approving the minutes, the agenda for today, or the minutes from last time?
We are approving the agenda and the minutes from last time.
I think what I'd like to, and I don't know if it's the right place to do it, is I know that an email went out from you regarding Tom in the last meeting, and then we're gonna kind of discuss that. Part of the reason I wanna discuss that is I'm a little unaware of, the training and how procedurally these meetings are gonna go, and I don't know if we need to look at that, or discuss it with the board, or have it as an agenda item. I mean, in the email it was referenced that because the last board, didn't work, I wanna make sure that we don't have the same thing happen here today. And I don't want an email. I wanna make sure that we all understand how this is gonna work. So I don't know where best to put that.
We can add an agenda item at the end if everyone's okay with that, and Tom can say whatever he wants to say, absolutely. And you can say whatever you want to say, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Any objection to that? Okay, and so Tom, you have the final bullet point on the agenda. comments on the actual agenda or the minutes from last month?
I have a couple comments on the minutes. Nancy's not here, so. Under the homework committee, it references that there's an attachment. I don't know that we need to attach the motion or any attachment, as the motion failed, so, or was withdrawn. But if we are going to attach that motion, it should be attached, and it's referenced in the minutes. And then, let's see, as far as the public forum, I think, again, if we're going to attach motions, I think here we would want to attach the motion that we adopted at the last meeting. And we have copies of that, so that way we know what we voted on. So, I guess I would recommend changing or adding a sentence that states that the motion that was approved is attached. And then lastly, my motion at the end of the last meeting was to postpone discussion of the seating of board members until this meeting. That was the motion that I made.
And how is that different than what's there, Tom? Maybe this is something.
I think the language on the last page of the minutes indicates that I wanted to postpone discussion of all of the topics, but it was really only the seating of the board members.
Okay. Understood. Any other comments? Hearing none, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're doing business. Approval of the faculty compensation plan. Is that you and me?
It sure
Just
is.
appendix C.
Can you give some context for this? I'm sure you will.
Yeah, so Appendix C is a QCOM performance initiative schedule. And this is just the description, if you will, of what staff members can do here as part of our QCOM program. It's broken up into 3 categories. The first category is 10%. And that is each school, each division has a goal that they have set at the beginning of the year. And it's highlighted in those, I'm not gonna read it word for word, so I'm just gonna highlight the major things for you. For lower school, they had a reading MCA, MCA score of, it wanted to increase from 82.7% to 84.7% in 2016. So these are the projected goals for this coming year. And then middle school, the MCA reading will increase from 89.9 to 91.7. And as we're
91.7?
91.7, yeah.
Just under 2, huh?
Yeah.
I'm on the full 2.
Yeah. That should be.
Well, it sounds to be 89.
Yeah, 89.7, right?
9.7.
Sorry, that's a typo. So it should be 89.7.
No!
There it is, to 91.7. And what we're finding with this is the higher the percentage that we're getting, the harder it is to reach, obviously. But we still have to do the 2%, and that's a state requirement, where we do a 2% increase every time. And then the upper school is 87.5 to 89.5. So if each school, as a whole school, meets those goals, then the teachers in that school receive $180. If the school doesn't, then that division doesn't. So for example, last year, middle school by 0.1. Okay, we didn't make it by 0.1. And then upper school.
It was more.
It was
okay?
more. Just saying.
We set hard goals.
I know, it gets hard. And then lower school did meet their goal. So that's something that we look into every year, and that's something that our PLCs work for, is trying to, help with the achievement of that. And then the category 2 is 40.
Can I get one thing about
Yes,
that
please.
particular bit of, the QComp money that comes in though, then if we don't issue that,
Yeah.
allocate that, it stays in the school for training purposes.
Yes.
And
Yep.
for, so it's also, we don't lose that funding, it just gets repurposed to, more training, professional development.
Yeah.
So we
do.
still, and we still, yeah,
We
sorry.
don't lose it,
Right.
it's just more money to those teachers. And then, the second category, category 2, is 40% of the QComp, money that comes in is for PLC involvement and portfolio work. And so all of the teachers have portfolios, and in those portfolios, there's lots of wonderful things happening, but their observation material goes in there, the SMART goals that they create, that goes in there. They do peer observations and PLC leader observations. All of those things are components of their portfolio. And so if they, and the PLC meetings are happening weekly, so every week staff are meeting together in their PLCs for 50 minutes, and then on professional development days, we're meeting 90 minutes. So all of that is time that they're working together to collaborate with student achievement and with their SMART goals and with their observations, which brings us to the next category, which is 50%. This is kind of what we believe so much in, is 50%, which is $900, are staff participating and getting a minimum score of at least 17 on 3 seminar PADEA observations. And we've spent a lot of time with seminars, and your kids probably have told you way too much about seminars or not enough. But these 3 observations, 2 of them are performed by the TLCs, which is Anna Makasted and we divide that, and then the other one is by the principal. And we use the same rubric, the seminar rubric, it's out of 51 points. So those 3 observations, they need to successfully get at least 17 points, which is really hard to get less than that.
We probably do it.
Yeah, we would probably do it over, to be honest, if it was to that point, so. Any questions with that?
I have a question.
Yes.
For our new board members, and is this something that, is QCOM something you guys are familiar with and have a sense of, or do you need even more background, and this is a good time to do it? Or should we do it offline? Because this is so familiar to me. I remember when this was in the legislature being debated, so it's been around for a long time, but is it something you'd like to take a few minutes to talk about right now, or, and it's fine if you don't, it's just not. Okay, we're good?
Well, if any questions, just ask me.
Any other questions?
I do want to make one correction too, and I'll get this to, I think, Terry or you. It's supposed to be MCA 3, not MCA 2, so that's just a.
You do a great job explaining it, Amy, thank you. It's so familiar to people that have been doing it for a while.
Are we looking for sustainability in the future in terms of?
It's a really great question.
I've seen it budgeted for, as QCOM, in the newer legislation coming through.
Yeah.
I've seen a space where they're talking about keeping and sustaining QCOM, so, as far as, yeah, I mean, there's value there, and the Department of Ed and legislature seem to think there's value in it as well, so, I mean, we won't know, they're doing pretty well, I mean, we'll see.
And that's something we'll just have to cross when we get to
Yes.
that, because this, as we've talked about on this board too, a lot of what we are doing, we really believe in as a school, and so even if the funds aren't there, we would wanna think, how can we continue to sustain PLCs and school-wide SMART goals and,
Right.
seminar, it's huge, so.
Any talk of getting rid of QComp has also come with replacing it with something comparable, so.
And we would also extend an invitation to any board member that wants to come and see a seminar. We'll hook you up with somebody because they're going on almost any given day. So if you want to come in and see what's happening with that, or we can do it.
Nice invitation. Any other comments? We don't actually need an approval of this. We do?
Yes.
Okay, move approval. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Amy. world's best workforce.
The fun just keeps on going. All right, so the world's best workforce report summary. This, again, I won't read this line by line for you, but to summarize this is something that we have to do in accordance with the Minnesota State statute. And the school board and at a public meeting has to adopt this long-term strategic plan, which what I'm going over now is the report summary from last year. So there's not a plan that we'll be talking about at this board meeting, but this is last year's. And then the whole point is to improve teaching and learning and align it with creating the world's best workforce. So it seems like a very loaded statement, world's best workforce. But basically, when you go through this, you'll see kind of what we've done. So once we have approved this report summary, excuse me, this slide is my business. Once we review this, it will be published on, at some point, like in our website. So that's not included, but that will be. The link will be included in that. The annual public meeting, you will find a series of dates that we talked about this previously, and I have listed those on page 1. If you flip to page 2, it talks about the individuals that were a part of this along the way, and you know, it really is just a broad spectrum of people in the community at school, the stakeholders, you know, who has been a part of this and talking about this in board meetings and outside. So the goals and results are what I really want to talk about, and there's 5 components to the goals and results, and these are SMART goals, but they don't necessarily always tie to our QComp SMART goals, which can be confusing. So I'll do the best I can to explain it. So the first one, and please anybody jump in if there's a typo. We've all kind of been working on this. So all students ready by kindergarten. The 14-15 goal was that 95% of students enrolling in first grade were enrolled in kindergarten the year prior. And Joanne typed up a beautiful description here of 100% of students were promoted to first grade last year. So of the 90 students in kindergarten last year, 85 returned to think or prep in first grade, so that's a 95% retention. So we met our goal for that. And then with this over the years, we've talked about and discussed about how we want to get our kindergartners or the kiddos coming in to really be ready for kindergarten. So down here, it just describes some of the things that went into those kindergarten readiness. And that includes, you know, all the different types of components like social, emotional, physical, and cognitive readiness. So when they come in August, that's something that they are, the teachers are looking at as part of like the kindergarten camp as well, which is a 4-day. Any explanation, any extra on that? Just a quick summary, so let me know. The next thing are all students in 3rd grade achieve grade level literacy. And our SMART goal for this was at 4% or more of students who had partially met the standards. We're going to move to meet the standards on their MCA reading test. And of the 8 students who partially met in 3rd grade, 5 moved to the standard in 4th grade. So that was really great. And then 4% or more who did not meet the standard moved to partially met. And of the 4 students who did not meet in 3rd grade, 3 moved to partially met. So the next one is closing the achievement gap among all grades, and this was dealing with PLCs implementing reading curriculum that supports 4% or more, and it's dealing with our free and reduced lunch program. So 4% of that population would partially meet the standard to meet the standard in reading on the MCAs to partially meet or better. So of the 56 students, and there's a I also want to point out on page, is it 5? Yeah, page 5, there are charts for all of the data, which I won't go through, but we just kind of compiled what needed to show you for that. So of the 56 that were enrolled, 8.9% partially met and 82.1 met the standard. So this is over a 4% move from the previous year, and that's on chart 1. And then in the K-12, generally speaking, kindergarten through 12th grade, the PLC teachers for math, we're looking at a curriculum that would support a 4% move from partially meets the standards to meet the standards. And of the 86 4th graders who took the MCA test, 0% did not. Oh, sorry, that was 4th grade. I fourth grade. 86% of the fourth graders who took it, 0% did not meet, 5.8 partially met, and 94.2 met this. So this was a 1.1 change from the partially met to met since the previous year. So a lot of data in that. And that rolls into the next one. I think it kind of got cut between two different pages, so that's where the fourth grade was coming in. And then the last one was all, or the second to last one, all students career and college ready by graduation. So 4% or more of students in each subject area would move from not ready for college to college ready. And looking at we could look at the administration of the ACT Explorer plan, and looking at the ACT and Explore. In the ACT, the average score was 2.5. In English, the average was 25.1 in English, right? Yeah, 25.1 in English. And that was the average score was 25.1. In English, the average was 24.5. In math, 24.5. And in reading, 26.2. And then finally in science, 24.7. So this was all based on the ACT College Readiness Letter. And to show on chart 3, you can kind of see how that all came around. And then we didn't make the goal for that.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
The ACT was required for all juniors last year, and it's not that, I mean, so everybody took it, and the year before not everybody took it, right? So those that wanted to take it took it. So I think the data doesn't necessarily, yeah, but it's just an awareness piece. It's fine. I mean, it gives us good information.
Yep. And Andrew made.
The state has now decided, based on their lawsuit with Pearson, they're going to, if people want to take the ACT, the state will pay for it.
This year.
So we have to make it available to all juniors, but it's not mandatory, correct?
Next year they won't have budget for the test unless something changes in the legislature, and we will still need to provide it, but there will be no reimbursement for the test. So
That'll be in next year.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oops.
Sorry, off track a little bit.
Oh, that's fine. We did not make our goal of 4% to increase our Explore college readiness scores. But even though our scores went down, we're still above the national results, and that is also stated on your chart. It should be chart 4. Oh yeah, no, chart 4. And then last, all students graduate. You can help me with this one, Andrew, too, because I learned a lot about.
I learned a lot about this.
We learned a lot in this process about graduation. So the goal here was 90%, at least 90% of the St. Clair kiddos would graduate. And what happened here was 87%, there was a graduation rate of 87%, and the reason was that we were not aware that exchange students placed as seniors counted against our numbers.
That's right. So I made a mistake. When we get that last week before school comes, we get a call for about 6 or 7 foreign exchange kids that, Stillwater's done taking kids, and I'm like, sure, it's great. It's a great experience for the kids, whatever. Their transcripts are very different from all over the world, and I kind of just say, how old are you? And then build them a schedule. Well, if I build them a schedule as a senior, they're expecting them to graduate. And so we just don't unpack their credits, and they're not intending to graduate. They intend to go back home and graduate from their home school. But that's why I put excluding exchange students. That's our graduation rate. Okay, so that was a learning moment for me with the state of Minnesota. So, my bad. So are we? Yeah, everyone's a junior. Doesn't matter where they're from. I added that. It wasn't asked of it, but I think that gives us a clear narrative.
Right, so if we exclude the exchange students, which does not seem fair, but if we did, our graduation rate would have been 94%. So.
Did you have a comment, Kelly?
Only that I wanted to know what that number was.
Yeah. Yep, 94%.
And 90 was our goal.
Yep, 90 was our goal.
And there is also kids that don't finish on time. All right. There's a 5th year look. They look at. call that?
They call it
Yeah,
super senior.
But the 50, and they also have a 6th-year rate too.
Yeah.
And so there are kids out there still working at it, but that counts against us in this count.
It counts against us in this count, but then if they do graduate in 5 years, it does add a little bit more
Right.
to the next year, so it's a weird little
So we
configuration
still-
that they have. But even if they don't graduate with the class in June, they have till September 15th to get their
That's right.
credits completed.
And we stay engaged with all of those kids, regardless of, even if they enroll at an ALC or somewhere else, they technically count against us because they're enrolling somewhere else. So it's, right, believe me, yeah.
And
But-
isn't it that if they start in 9th grade with you, you have to count them through?
Yes, that's, yeah.
So, I mean, so if it's 10th grader goes to an ALC, you still counting them in your cohort?
Oh, I don't know
No.
that, I didn't know that. It's usually because
No,
they.
it's just
If
a
they
senior?
enroll in another school, they don't count for us or against us if they graduate on time.
Okay, got that.
I
But
mean,
it's-
you know,
what's
or
hard
if
is
they
when
don't
they-
graduate,
District.
if they don't graduate,
Yes.
like if they drop out at 16, they would count against you.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about Explore College Readiness? What is that? Is that a
Yeah.
standardized
Is it-
test?
I'll
Is
pass
it-
that to Andrew.
It was and wanna go ahead,
Yeah.
it's a test aligned to the ACT. So it gives us we took it in 8th grade and then in 10th grade to kind of show where kids' projected ACTs would be and kind of get them used to that type of exam. Is familiar as they go. It gives us some pretty good information about gaps, but that was now defunded as well, so we don't have that
And the test doesn't exist anymore.
test yet. So they're looking at piloting a new type of ACT aligned test called Aspire, but they all cost money, and then you never know. So,
Thank you.
With chart 4,
Yeah.
what?
can you just, with chart 4,
Yeah.
it goes English SCPA, English National, English SCPA,
Oh,
English
you know
Yep.
what? Is that-
This is
One's
from the.
supposed to be,
No,
no, the titles are
It's,
wrong.
The
yep,
titles are
yep,
wrong. They're
no,
supposed to be
so
the
it
different
was supposed,
subjects,
it
right?
was supposed to be like English, science, math. Yep, good catch.
Language arts.
So I can update that and get that into the next board meeting. I
And
don't
the
know whether.
college-
And the categories.
Yeah.
College readiness stuff comes from the college board.
Yeah.
It's based on everyone's,
That's English,
our
math.
school's results.
Oh, here, I can,
Yeah, here, I can tell you.
we can do
So,
it in here.
yeah, the first one should be English, the second one should be math. The third one is reading / that's actually social studies, but they call it reading. And then the last one is science. I know, I didn't make this up.
You get thrown under reading.
And then all the rest are national.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and those would be the same corresponding, so they would be math national, reading national, science national. Yeah, so you can see that even though our scores dipped a little bit, because, I mean, we're comparing different groups of kids. So one grade to the next could be a slight difference. Those could have been, we had a number of new students that came in last year, everybody took the test. But you can see we're still well above the national average, and I am disappointed that the Explorer has gone away. It was a really good test, and for the years prior, we were able to give it even down to the 5th grade, which gave us really nice data on how kids were tracking towards college. But they would not let us do it off grade level last year, and the only reason we got to do the Explore and the Plan again was because of the contract with Pearson. They won't allow anybody to do the test this year, and they don't have a replacement. The Aspire is an online test, and it's brand new. They haven't done a lot of correlation yet, and it's $30 a student. So quite pricey if we're looking at, whether or not we want to spend $15,000 to $20,000 on a test.
And time and
And time,
technology.
yeah,
Takes
and
away from
technology.
utilizing, so.
Cause yeah, it's a 4-hour test, so needs to be given on one thing.
Just a couple more things. So on page 6, some strategies and support category. So here it's just explain with students, teachers, and principals and districts, what are some things that are implemented in order to help kids be successful in some of these goals that we have set for them. Some of these things are the peer tutoring system that we have here. We have a college counselor here who provides ACT prep, financial aid information, college application assistance, college budget coordination, 504 plans, IEPs when appropriate. This program helps students ongoing, continuously with looking at their data on where we need to help them to continue to achieve to the best of their ability. And then there's advisors in upper school, and they also do extensive grade level checks and skills development continuously as well. For teachers and principals, we receive support from the QComp program, and as I explained before, there's some checks and balances in there as well to help us provide the support for kids. There's an evaluation aligned with the World's Best Workforce requirement. We do a lot of PLC meetings aligned with the goals of the school. You can kind of see this is all tied in. And then as well as professional development. So anytime that we plan a professional development, half day or full day, we're thinking of all of these things when we make those plans. And then for the district-wide, we have implemented the QComp program, like I said, today, seminars in every classroom, K-12 professional development. And that's really huge too, being in a community where kindergarten through 12th grade teachers can come together and talk about what's going on is huge. And we just had a great professional development day a couple weeks ago, the Friday. Teachers got around round tables all across our grade levels and had a really good discussion on critical thinking. And it was a Terry Roberts book reading that we had them read, and it was really powerful. So we want to use those things as much as we can to work all together. And that is.
Any questions or comments, other thoughts?
I had a few. Could you tell me a little bit about the annual public meeting and how those went and how well attended they were? So it looks like the Department of Education requires an annual public meeting to communicate the plans for the upcoming school year. And the stakeholders should be meaningfully involved, and this meeting is to occur separately from a regularly scheduled school board meeting. So it looks like there were a number of days that constituted the annual public meeting for 2014, 2015. Could you just tell me a little bit more about those meetings?
Yeah, these ones that I put down were just board meetings. Well, I just listed the board meetings that we talked about it.
Okay. So is there an annual public meeting for, so next year when we're doing this report, is there an annual public meeting for 2015, 2016 where we talk about the upcoming school year and we're in the midst of it? I guess I'm asking, have we had annual public meetings that seem to be required by this report? Other than board meetings.
Last year was the first year, so this is the first
Sure.
time we'll be doing this, the report now for the second time.
And it actually rolled out, again, after the start of the school year and after things were rolling, but it's a good point and a good catch to schedule a separate public meeting. I think the idea of this agenda item is this is informational with approval at next month's board meeting, so this is not for approval tonight. So part of what we could do in second month's review of this and the approval is to add a date, pick a date for the public meeting. So that's helpful. Nice.
And then on the advisory committee, it says, the district advisory committee must, okay, some of this is just throat clearing, for lack of a better way to put it. It says that the district advisory committee must include teachers, parents, support staff, students, and other community residents. Parents and other community residents are to comprise at least 2/3 of the advisory committee members when possible. So the district advisory committee makes recommendations to the school board. So from the names on the next page of the report, I had a hard time seeing how we had the 2/3 parent community member representation on that advisory board. I mean, there's lots of parents and community members, but I think a number of them are board members or staff or teachers. So again, I mean, it sounds like this was rolled out very recently. So we have an existing advisory board, we have an existing board. But it seems like what they're asking for here is a district advisory committee that's 2/3 parents and other community members, when possible, whatever that means. People will do it, yeah, that might be it.
I think that's exactly right, and I think that to put the invitation out there is well worth doing, and you know, announce the annual meeting, and put the invitation out for people to join the advisory committee, and then everybody that serves on that can help educate the board about all this good data. Others? Thank you, Amy, and since it's informational, we will look at it again next month, which is a practice. We try and follow and taking a first pass at it, and thanks for the good comments, Tom. You know, I rolled my eyes a little bit when this was first introduced last year. It's a fairly bureaucratic policy, but it is actually giving us a lot of data that I think is helpful. So I appreciate it as I start to understand it better, because it's, what, 9 months old, 7 months old?
I think the difficulty for us is there's so much crossover between QCOM, annual reports, MCAs, and this report that it seems like we're reduplicating effort to produce some of the same information. So I think even just the representation of the advisory committee, because it was rolled out late, this really represents probably board, advisory board, teachers, and in that composition there's a lot of parents, so I think it was just our effort to get going on some of this. So I think that's probably the biggest thing we're trying to figure out.
And when we're dealing with goals, and John and I have talked about this, it says SMART goal, what SMART goal? The PLC SMART goal, like each individual PLC SMART goal, our school goal, our QCOM goal, I mean, what SMART, our Friends of Education goal, I mean, there's just so many, and unfortunately they don't always tie beautifully together, which in a perfect world they would.
Thanks, Amy. It's not on the agenda, but I just want to take a moment and acknowledge Jason's beautiful letter that he wrote to us about his resignation as vice chair. Will continue to serve on the board as a community member. Jason has become a good friend, and I've come to truly appreciate his expertise in the education arena, and also his expertise as a parliamentarian. I can't even say that, let alone do it. So thank you, Jason, for your service. Jason was our oldest daughter's social studies teacher, and a gifted teacher, a dedicated board member, and as I wrote to him in a note this afternoon, for me, he will always be the voice of SCPA, because if you hear him on the loudspeaker, it's impressive. He can fill the gym even without the amplification. So anyway, thank you, Jason, for your service, and thank you for being a part of the growth of the school for over 9 years. Thanks.
Thank you. So, just when did you start at Sacred Prep as a teacher?
I was hired in spring of 2008, and I attended my first board meeting in June 2008, before I had even started. The board meeting was up in the old art space across the street downtown. Archery was just starting. That was one of the first reports that I heard at the board level. And I sat next to Kelly, and Kelly was nice enough to share part of her sandwich with me. I'm not finishing it all. So they were, I think they were shooting
literally
in
in this room.
that room.
While we're having
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about your math mascot decision, the Lion versus the Phoenix, and beating Mr.
His biggest win.
I think that was more so than the letter jacket between light blue and navy blue.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to thank you just because you probably lived the adoption curve, but also I still remember meeting you at the first,
I remember that.
at the teacher fair.
Yes, yes, it was.
And so, just thank you for your hard work, your efforts, and for your continued support in what we do. So,
I appreciate it. I'm not leaving the board yet, but in my letter I did indicate, because of my professional responsibilities and because I feel that the vice chair should be the chair in waiting, and since I have decided not to run for re-election when my term expires in the spring, that it is in the best interest of the board to have a vice chair that is ready and able to take the position of the chair. I do feel that very strongly that best practice dictates that the vice chair should be preparing to be the chair. So since I'm not seeking re-election and will not be waiting for Chair Marcoux to step down, which I hope he does not anytime soon, personally, I felt it was in the best interest of the board to look at changing that. I also simply, with my professional commitments and other commitments to other governing boards that I serve on, just simply don't have the time, unfortunately, to be here and to make sure that I'm deeply connected with parents and with faculty and staff and most importantly our students. I've obviously moved on professionally, and all of the students that I taught I see them around campus, or Max Hall, one of our first graduates, is now a student representative to the Board of Regents. I think I've mentioned that, so I get to see him occasionally now in my work there. Yes, he's in law school and MBA joint with Carlson. So this seems like a natural point for me to step aside and to allow new leadership to come in, but I'll stop here because you're going to have to put up with me for at least a few more minutes.
And you're going to be around to draw, we can be able to draw your wisdom.
Yes, and St. Croix Prep will always hold a very special place in my heart with all of the work that certainly I've done, and certainly now as my profession is governing boards, so I would always be happy if the board or the school had questions. I'd be happy to come back and certainly to help in any way I can, but more from the sidelines than on the field.
In an unofficial.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason.
you do this one first. Yeah, let me. I'll move the miscellaneous field development one up. I think next month the activities director, associate activities director, are going to come in and introduce you to the Minnesota State High School League, how it's organized, our entrance into a conference, and now that we're in a conference, expectations on facilities, and some of the things that we probably need to look at. Even in our administration, even today we talked about the fact that even during recess and breaks, kids are playing in the parking lot, and when cars are moving in and out, it's probably not the safest place to be. Field development is probably high on the list as far as strategic items, and I think the board needs to be aware of that. Also, it's probably not St. Croix Prep's duty, but it's probably Friends of St. Croix Prep, since they do own the building and they own the land. So that'll something that's probably going to come to Friends of St. Croix Prep in joint conversation with So with that you'll learn more about that next.
Thanks. Any questions about that? Thoughts? So, one of the things that we have a real need to accomplish as a board are some of the strategic initiatives that have been hanging out there for a few months, and some of them several months, and something that's near and dear to my heart and important to the school is succession planning, and Shane Mueller has agreed that he will take on the process of working on succession planning for the key administrative team members, and also maybe just taking a look at the board in terms of succession planning and what that should look like. Susan Peterson has agreed to work with the board to plan the board retreat, and also to be part of the initiative to expand the presence of the parent group in their interactions with the board. And I I think that's a great initiative. I'm really appreciative of the willingness to do that. And Susan or Sean, any comments about both those initiatives?
Oh, that's right.
Sean.
Yeah.
It's been a long week in so many ways.
Exactly.
Can you take a step back? Is this, are we doing, coming up with a plan to bring to the board, or is there a committee that they're putting together to help, if you're walking in, and that's a big job, I mean, so are they putting a committee together, what is the whole?
So, just initially, the idea is to put together a plan to bring to the board of what that would look like, and to bring it to the board as a discussion item, not as a done deal, not a fait accompli, but actually something that we can all chew on and add to and modify and then as a board approve. Is that?
Yeah, so we'll do this like as a standing, every month, is there a deadline, is there?
I'm gonna leave that up to Susan and Shane to decide, how they want to structure it initially, but this would not be a formal standing committee of the board. It would be an ad hoc committee of the board for the special purpose of addressing these strategic needs. And again, this is just trying to start to get some traction on these issues so that we as a board can have the conversation collectively. This is not coming to the board with a decision. This is simply a process started. Anything to add to that, John? And so, compensation, I'm going to jump down to the compensation issue. This issue has come up a couple times in the last few months, and people have expressed concern about faculty compensation, and we've had a long-term strategic need to update our compensation plan. So, as I always say, good teachers cannot be paid enough. I'm hoping, Beth, because you've expressed an interest in this, that you'll consider leading the process as completely ad hoc without any deliverables that you have to come up with, but bringing us some suggestions on how to address that issue of compensation.
You know what I'd really like is that Jason would help me do governance. I would like to see that.
I don't know that Jason's gonna be doing any committees.
No, I'm just looking for like.
I'll be happy to weigh in and to help, but
Yeah, if I took the lead,
Sure.
because I think you have some expertise that I think should be tapped into.
Sure.
I prefer that.
Okay. So the compensation issue needs to be taken on. Tom, are you able to lead the process to start the discussion on compensation?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, great.
Do we need, just to back up, like Beth was saying, are these things where we want teachers, members of the committees as well, teacher board members? You want community members on these as well, or because it looks like the new parent members are getting these assigned, and I'm happy to take compensation, but I'm just trying to understand if are there other board members who are interested in this?
So by way of background, one of the things we talked about over the summers when we were doing board training is we asked each of the new board members what they'd like to do. Susan and Shane expressed an interest in those specific areas that were on the list of strategic initiatives, and Tom and Beth did not. They said, pick something, and so that's what this really is about. In terms of the makeup of a ad hoc committee, this is purely at your discretion because it truly is a clean slate. It's not something that needs to look a certain way, but the idea is to use your expertise, which is abundant, and your expertise, Beth, which is abundant, and put together a process that you think will bring a good product to the board to move these strategic initiatives forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to take compensation.
And maybe one way to think about it is using kind of a committee of the whole model, where you're kind of bringing forward information, because certainly we're not big enough to have 10 people committees for each of these. So I think maybe in some ways it's kind of a committee of the whole that we would be looking to to each of you to help lead us all together in discussion on these items, and kind of trying to lay out some direction of how we move forward.
I think that's a good clarification. What I see this as, and the board, this is not my decision, it's the board's decision, so please, anybody jump in anytime. The idea is that these initiatives need to be moved forward through the board discussion process, so what I'm looking for is help bringing them to the board in a form that is conducive to a good conversation at the board level to actually approve a new compensation plan for the faculty to start to have a clear picture of what the succession plan looks like and timing and issues like that, and to have an understanding of what the governance policy, maybe even eventually lead to a governance policy handbook, where it's actually a written, that's where this board is here, and we need to get way over here, and that's one of the key pieces is the governance piece that needs to actually be codified. So.
And I would certainly see with many of these, it will probably be, talking about, probably having you work on some draft goals and some, objectives, and then bringing those and us as a board discussing, and then thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to achieve those, and then at what points do we want to involve consultation from a variety of stakeholders, not just those on the board, because certainly a few of these, especially I think something like compensation, we want to make sure that we are consulting that broadly across the entire faculty. The same with the parent group as well. We want to consult that broadly.
Just a bit of back.
Talking points during our forums.
Just a bit of background information for the newer board members. We had just undergone a faculty volunteer compensation committee. Dave was on that. I don't know who else you said on the board here was on that. And where we got to the end of, we took it as a board directive to get to a pay for performance component to the compensation, and we did not, as a faculty and administration, get to that. And that was kind of the piece that a year ago we volleyed back to the board and said, we need your help. And I've since accumulated a couple examples of pay for performance comp plans in other charter schools in the area. So as I recall, that was where we left off the compensation plan of 2014.
It's helpful context. Anything else on these strategic initiatives?
I would like to help. Shane, if you'd like me to with the succession planning,
Sure.
put together on that.
Thank you. All right.
And I'd say obviously since the administration has institutional knowledge and all the compensation plans, all the succession plan work, all the governance work that's been done previously, we're more than happy to help with that. So folders are full of stuff.
Yeah, that's a nice offer. What I hear Kelly saying is that there's a lot of context that would be valuable, and it would be probably important to have the context before starting off on a clean slate. The clean slate is sitting on top of a bunch of old, dusty plans. And I can remember working on the first compensation plan with Bob Kreischer going back 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it's a complicated process because it really is challenging to figure out how to start out and get to a place that everyone or almost everyone feels good about. So thank you, Tom, for that, and Beth and Shane and Susan. I don't have anything else in the strategic initiatives unless you do, John. And I think Tom wanted to have a conversation about some communication that took place in email form, and make sure it was an open board meeting, not in the serial email fashion. So, Tom, you have the floor.
And I'll try to keep myself to the 2 minutes that the other people had. Okay, so you know, after the last email I received, or after the last board meeting, I received an email from Jim with some thoughts on improving my interactions on the board. Let's put it that way. And so, because of open meeting law, because the entire board was on that email, I can't just send a response and email everybody and say, thanks for email, Jim, and you know, here's my response, because the open meeting law says we're supposed to do that in meetings. So, you know, rather than kind of go through this at a pretty granular level, which I think would be a great thing to talk about maybe at a board retreat, where we just talk about communication on the board and interaction and that sort of thing. Just at a very high level, I guess what I'd say is, you know, there's a famous theory of group development by Tuckman, and the theory is forming, storming, norming, performing. And those 4 stages that groups go through are forming, pretty self-explanatory, storming, which is the phase where people kind of, there's some friction, there's some tension. People talk about what they think the goals of that group are that they're supposed to perform. It's very normal. Groups go through it. People who race through that stage to norming never get to performing. And they don't even get to norming, actually, either. It kind of falls apart. Once people have kind of had that opportunity to have some interactions, and sometimes they're, you know, for people who are Minnesotans, they're not always that comfortable. People want to say, okay, let's get on with this. Let's just get over to getting what we need to get done. But it's important to kind of respect that stage and have those discussions, and that's how you get to norming, and that's how you get to performing. So, you know, this board has gone through a lot in the last 6 months, 9 months, a lot of things that predate my presence on this board. So I did not bring the dysfunction, I guess is what I would say, to use the D word. I know no one wants to hear that, but we're in the middle of it. And I think it's important to have conversations where we can disagree but not be disagreeable. And if there are points where people feel like a board member is being disruptive or disrespectful or what have you, I can only speak for myself and say, I don't mind being called out on that right at the time. It's the board chair's job to maintain order in the meeting, and if I'm out of order, just point it out to me. That to me is more helpful, where I can address it in the moment, rather than you know, receive an email later where the moment has passed and I have a harder time you know, recognizing that opportunity. So I think I'll just leave it at that, with maybe one minor addition. You know, I had earlier proposed a little bit closer following of Robert's rules. I don't think any institution should follow it letter by letter. I don't know that any of them do. It's an excellent sleeping pill for you. If you are having a hard time sleeping, pick up a copy of Robert's Rules and pick any page. But there are books that summarize the rules in a very straightforward, you know, less than 200-page manner, and it really makes it, I think, a useful tool for different boards to use. But again, I think something like that would be a good topic for a board retreat, where we talk about, you know, what are the right tools to facilitate our conversations, some of which might be sometimes difficult conversations. So I think, I'm throwing the fake here, but I think that's really all I wanted to say tonight. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thanks for sharing your perspective. Appreciate it, Tom. Anything else? We need to end at 7 o'clock.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Go home and see if I can catch my wife at
All in favor of Any opposed to adjourning? Motion carries.
Can I get a copy of the next piece that they sent about? No,
I